The Cleric has been a long-standing class in the game of Dungeons & Dragons. It's seen multiple iterations through all of its rule sets, but the origins of this class and its story to get to the point of where it is today was genuinely insane. I didn't know half of this stuff. The Cleric and its origins have to be one of the deepest and most complex classes that Dungeons & Dragons has ever known. And as I've been researching this video, I have been scouring the internet for information about the Cleric. And I was able to do so by staying on track by planning out my meals with Factor, the sponsor of the video. Living an active and healthy lifestyle isn't always easy, and cooking on top of work, kids, relationships, etc. can feel overwhelming. But with Factor, you have the flexibility to stay active while also having convenient meals. Put that thing in the microwave for 2 minutes and you got a delicious, ready-to-eat meal. With Factor's new expanded menu, it's easier than ever to find something that you will like that also fits your needs. Factor has doubled the size of their menu to 80 plus rotating weekly meals. They also have tons of options for plant-based diets, which, you know, is a huge bonus for Emma, who's vegan. Factor allows you to stay on track with wellness-forward meals made with whole food ingredients that taste incredible. So head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code FireballFB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for a year. That's code FireballFB50 at Factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's actually awesome. Wait, what? I want that. All right. Back to the video. All right, everybody, gather around. It's story time. Our story begins in the 1970s. Dungeons & Dragons is basically a set of homebrew rules for a medieval combat miniature war game system called Chainmail. Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson effectively took the rules of Chainmail and added monsters, myth, magic, and ancient explorable places, inspired by Lord of the Rings and Dark Shadows. It was first published as a 15-page fantasy supplement to Chainmail in 1971. So D&D is not a game yet, it doesn't exist. We've got Chainmail, which is a game that exists, and Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson are adding their own rules to it for fun. And Dave Arneson has a campaign in this game that he and his friends play called Blackmoor. Much of the basis of D&D as we know it were players coming up with character ideas for Arneson's Blackmoor. According to one of his players, Mike Bernard, they would play as good guys or bad guys, and Dave was the referee. One of his players, David Fant, had a character named Sir Fang, who used to be the Baron of Blackmoor, but became a vampire. His name was really Sir Fang. Heavily inspired by Christopher Lee and Hammer horror films like Dracula or Flesh and Blood, Sir Fang went sicko mode on Blackmoor. He died, was resurrected, and then made an undead legion on the side of evil which threatened the balance of the campaign. I love how nothing has changed. This is your average player in 2025. So Dave had a problem. Sir Fang is way too strong. He's turning everyone into vampires and amassing a legion of undead. He has to be defeated. But the game currently doesn't have a way to deal with this. There wasn't a character type that could wield a weapon and cast spells, or more importantly, heal and cure diseases. Their first idea? There should be a class like Peter Cushing in the Dracula films, a vampire hunter. They drew up the rough specs, and Mike Carr, presumably, played the first iteration of a priest in the campaign. This character was Bishop Carr. He named it after himself. That's me, I'm Bishop Carr. I recall having the ability to cast 1 or 2 spells and having the ability to help heal minor wounds. Gary Gygax also added that the priest shouldn't be able to wield edged weapons like knives, swords, or arrows. He was inspired by the Song of Roland, a fictitious 11th century medieval epic poem that recounts the Battle of Roncesvalles, where Roland, a French soldier, is betrayed and makes a final stand against an army, blowing an elephant horn in hopes of calling reinforcements so hard he bleeds from his temples. A character named Archbishop Turpin, who represents the force of the Christian church, wields a mace so as to not shed blood and follow the words of Jesus, who lives by the sword, dies by the sword.
Don't you know that he who lives by the sword dies by the sword?
I read through, skimmed, the Song of Roland, and Archbishop Turpin wields a sword called Almace. I can find no mention of Archbishop Turpin, who, by the way, in history was Archbishop Tilpin, ever wielding a mace to not shed blood. Trying to find a source to this brings me to a lot of articles about Gary Gygax and clerics, so I think he made that up. Or it's a popular rumor. Humans attempting to pass down stories and myth moment. It's a popular belief in fiction that priests don't wield weapons. Evidence is contrary to this. But hey, Gygax wanted to have a reason for priests to be limited in the type of weapons they use to uphold that fantasy. In the book, The Evolution of Fantasy Role-Playing Games, cleric's origins are drawn from the Bishop Odo of Bayeux, who was depicted in the Bayeux tapestry as wielding a club-like mace at the Battle of Hastings. Popular perceptions of the time believed that the bishop wielded the mace to avoid shedding blood, as mandated by clergy taking a vow of non-violence. I read the Song of Roland for nothing! But anyways, the priest is born! Mike Carr plays Bishop Carr in Blackmore and recalls him being not too powerful and having to face dangerous monsters to give him experience, like a Balrog. As more rules were added, like the priest, the little chainmail supplement grew into its own fantasy game. Gygax and Arneson had a difficult time finding a publisher for the fantasy game. No, it was literally called the fantasy game, so they renamed it to Dungeons and Dragons, and it was published by Technical Studies Rules, or TSR, in 1974 as 3 Little Brown Books, also known as LBBs, which included Men and Magic, Monsters and Treasure, and the Underworld and Wilderness Adventures. In Dungeons & Dragons 1974, your character options included dwarf, elf, hobbit, or man. Any of these choices gave you your abilities and what you could do. Dwarf and hobbit are just their own things. As an elf, you could also be a magic user, which is another one of the classes. But if you picked man, you needed to choose between fighting man, magic user, and the cleric. The priest title was dropped, and the cleric we know is present in the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Clerics follow idealisms of law and chaos. Chaos clerics, or evil clerics, cast some of their spells in reverse. For example, Bless increases attack and morale by 1. It's reversible, so the idea is that it gives a -1 to attack and morale. Other spells that are reversible are Cure Light Wounds, Detect Evil, and Continual Light. And if you know anything about modern D&D, you can already see the makings of these reversible spells. The one exception is Raise Dead, which resurrected characters. So reversed would remove them from life, and thus Finger of Death is born. I love that the origin of Finger of Death was a corrupted casting of Raise Dead. Any cleric could reverse their spells, and the book mentions that in a life or death situation, a good cleric might reverse cast Raise Dead to defeat an enemy. But depending on the situation, that would turn them into an evil cleric. That's really cool. Clerics also have their titular ability Turn Undead, following the inspiration of the Vampire Hunter. However, evil clerics just can't turn undead. It just doesn't work. What does Turn Undead do? I don't know. It doesn't really say. Whatever your interpretation of turn is. As the game got larger, rules were added and changed. Supplements and add-ons were becoming popular, and it became increasingly difficult to understand what D&D was. The Dungeons & Dragons basic set solved this. It was edited by J. Eric Holmes, based on Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson's original work, in an attempt to make a more straightforward and simpler version of D&D. And it was published in 1977 by TSR. And important note, the D&D basic set included all the rules. Yeah, that first D&D publishing didn't have all the rules. There was just this understanding that you knew how to play it already, or you used chainmail as a default. It's kind of why D&D ended up being such a niche hobby to begin with. The general vibe of people who played it were in a kind of a if you know, you know sort of situation. Basic D&D Cleric had a 1d6 hit dice. Their Turn Undead ability is actually explained, complete with a table. Clerics can cause undead to flee, but at higher levels can dispel them completely. Basic D&D also brings in alignment. Clerics being the primary reason for using this alignment system, considering their adjudication in casting Dispel Evil or Dispel Good, and that defining a cleric character being evil can now be defined by any character. Evil clerics have their reversed spells, but they're actually written out now, like Cause Light Wounds, Darkness, or Contaminate Food and Water. Then a year later comes Advanced D&D, which is like a massive add-on to basic D&D. AD&D was written by Gygax and edited by, hey, Mike Carr. AD&D presents players with a class and race option, the cleric being one of the class options, and the druid being kind of like a cleric subclass. Clerics, now with a d8 hit dice, are far more defined in AD&D, laying out the tenets of what makes a cleric. Quote, Clerics bear a certain resemblance to religious orders of knighthood of medieval times. The cleric serves to fortify, protect, and revitalize. Wisdom is their primary skill, and cleric characters gain more XP if their wisdom is higher. Clerics are dedicated to a deity or deities and are skilled at fighting. They have nearly as good a prospect of success in melee combat as fighters. All clerics have holy symbols, spells bestowed upon them from diligent prayer. Their spells must be spoken aloud, and they are forbidden to use edged and/or pointed weapons which shed blood. When reaching 8th level, they attract 2d10 times 100 followers if the cleric establishes a place of worship. These followers are fanatically loyal and serve without pay. Advanced D&D 2nd Edition. It's 1989 and everybody's vibing on 1st edition D&D. There's definitely no other reason why this book took so long to come out.
Warning signs of satanic behavior, a chalice or goblet, a decorative dagger.
Talk about evil clerics. But upon its release, we've returned to Priest. Priest in AD&D 2E is divided into 2 categories. And what I see, they get spells for free and attuning to their divinity. Another game, another time, another rhyme, another date, another old system with a fresh coat of paint. TSR Watsy taking the pie, and all the consumer gets is a plate of corporate lies! I don't know what that was. So in AD&D 2E, the priest is a believer and advocate of a god from a particular mythos, and they get powers from it. And while druids are based on the Germanic tribes of Western Europe and Britain during the Roman Empire, who acted as advisors to other tribes, believing Earth was the source to all life, clerics are similar to certain religious orders of knighthood of the Middle Ages, the Teutonic Knights, the Knights Templars, using military and religious training with a code of protection and service. Archbishop Turpin is an example of such a cleric. Oh, there he is again! All priest spells are divided into 16 categories called the Spheres of Influence, including Animal, Astral, Charm, Combat, Creation, Divination, Elemental, Guardian, Healing, Necromantic, Plant, Protection, Summoning, Sun, and Weather, which was dependent on your deity's dogma, like Agriculture, Blacksmith, Death, Disease, Earth, Healing, Hunt, Lightning, Love, Nature, Oceans, Peace, Strength, Thunder, War, and Wind. So now your cleric has a specific kind of mythos that they follow and gain their powers from. Your mythos also changed your turn undead. You would work with your DM on what the power of your cleric would be, like Incite Berserker Rage, Soothing Word, Charm or Fascination, or Inspire Fear. While verbose, I really like how elaborate a cleric can be in this edition. You can truly make the exact flavor of cleric that you want to play. They got even deeper into it with the Complete Priest's Handbook. This book is insane. It is 128 pages detailing all the different types of priests and clerics you could possibly play. Not only does it go into detail about how to make a priest character and how to flesh out their story, it goes over a lot of theology, ethos and requirements of faith, devotions, guidance, tithes, church trials, prophecy, followers and believers, where you go when you die, the role of faith. There's a level of separation between a game designer and what a god or religion or belief is, which can create this abstract thought of what that purpose is in a character, belief, and how it itself can be imaginary. This is technically a book about a TTRPG class, but it is more a concept of fictitious theology laid out in game terms. And there are a lot of game books that tackle ethics and psychology. And while on the surface it is a game and you're reading it to play a game, the text can often leave you with a little bit of political education. And the Complete Priest's Handbook is a hair away from being text that deconstructs theology. If there was any discussion about what a cleric or priest was supposed to be in D&D, the Complete Priest's Handbook gave a thorough and exhaustive definition. Who's that? Oh god, it's Wizards of the Coast! Boom bang pow, they own D&D now, and with that comes 3rd edition D&D. Priest is cut, it's just cleric now, and Druid gets its own class. I like to imagine the 3rd edition writers looking at the Complete Priest's Guide and being like, oh my god, we have to summarize this. And by golly, they sure do. 3rd edition clerics follow a god, are a part of a religion, and gain powers based on their faith. Being the healer is fundamental to the cleric's game design in previous editions. They did it better than any other class. So a lot of players knew clerics by and large as healers. In 3.5, there is a little less focus on clerics being fighters in comparison to old editions. They have some combat training, but it's not as extensive as, say, a fighter. And your cleric's alignment must be within one step of your deity. If your deity is lawful good, you need to be neutral good, lawful neutral, or, lawful good. 3.5 also provides clerics with example deities, domains, alignments, and their typical worshippers, but still allows you the freedom to make your cleric believe in whatever they want, even specifying that your cleric does not have to be devoted to a particular deity. Instead, you can choose 2 domains to represent their spiritual inclinations and abilities. Based! There's no more reverse spells, and instead, if your cleric falls into the evil domain, they get extra spells based on the evil domain spell list, as with any other domain. Also, any cleric can turn or rebuke undead. A good cleric turns or destroys undead, while an evil cleric rebukes or commands the undead. If your cleric is neutral, you have to decide which one they do. They differ from other spellcasters in that they can use spontaneous casting to change out prepared spells for ones within their alignment. Basically, a good cleric who prepares command can swap it out for Cure Light Wounds because that's a good spell. And a cleric who closely violates the code of conduct required by their god is stripped of all of their abilities and spells, but not their proficiency in weapons. They can keep that. 4th edition rolls around in 2008, and to keep up with the ever-growing popularity of MMOs like World of Warcraft, D&D's design went for a more simplified powers and dailies approach. Clerics in 4th edition have a leader-like role with a big focus on healing and defense. Clerics have 2 starting powers, Channel Divinity and Healing Word. Channel Divinity can be your choice of Divine Fortune or Turn Undead. Turn Undead now deals damage, pushes back, and immobilizes undead, while Divine Fortune gives you a +1 bonus to a roll. Healing Word does a quick 1d6 heal twice per encounter, but once per round. The biggest change here is that you no longer have spells and abilities, instead you have prayers. Each prayer is different in that some are melee attacks like Healing Strike, which lets you deal damage and heal in one action, or ranged like Spiritual Weapon, which conjures a weapon to attack for you. Consecrated Ground creates an area of radiance that deals damage and heals allies, or Knights of Unyielding Valor, which conjures ghostly knights to protect you. Clerics in 4e are also ritual casters. You get the ability to cast the Gentle Repose Ritual and another 1st level ritual spell. Ritual spells are non-combat spell-like abilities that you have to have specific access to via an ability, feat, or scroll. Much of the understanding and explanation of a cleric as an idea is diluted in 4e. Their primary role is that of a leader and healer. A table defining their domain exists mechanically. It's nothing more than flavor for your character. 4e was received pretty controversially. A blog post on Geek Related reviewing 4e in 2008 wrote, 3e is the highest point in the D&D game's evolution. It's to be built on, not thrown away. 4e throws it away, along with much of what makes D&D unique and what makes RPGs an interesting and distinct hobby. Epic fail. That's how you know it was written in 2008. While Mike on Sly Flourish, also in 2008, wrote, "As a DM, 4th edition is a dream. It gives me all the tools to build an exciting adventure that feels like an excellent action movie without worrying about power balance. Class powers are the next evolution in character action, providing the action-packed actions we'd expect in a good book or movie. Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition is the best tabletop RPG I've ever played." Hate it or love it, the density of the cleric was reduced to be more digestible in 4e. 2014. 5th edition. 5e clerics and 5e as a whole marries the 2 ideas of simplicity and making complex characters. Clerics are conduits for divine power, manifesting it as to miraculous effects. The gods don't grant this power to everyone who seeks it, but only to those chosen to fulfill a high calling. They are healers, warriors, and divine agents, and overall are described as having a major place within the world of D&D, and clerics cover a swath of domains. One of the most important things about making a cleric is to choose a deity and your cleric's relationship to that god. The story of this relationship is what drives the abilities of your cleric. 5e clerics are not limited to certain spells based on their alignment or domain, nor are they all gaining the exact same abilities. Instead, clerics choose their domain at 1st level, which acts as their subclass, granting them spells that are always prepared and unique abilities to each domain. For example, a life domain cleric is better at healing. A light domain cleric can dispel darkness. Trickery domain clerics can disappear or duplicate themselves. In older editions, you would decide that your cleric is good, have access to all the good spells, and act good. AD&D 2e really brought the idea of your cleric following after an ideal that encompassed a domain. 4th edition made them a bit easier to understand, but all clerics were now healers of good alignment. 5th edition clerics have a 1d8 hit dice and proficiency in all simple weapons, shields, and non-heavy armor. They have access to a list of spells that they prepare each day, and at first level they choose a preferred domain where they gain extra spells, and their channel divinity is resonant of their chosen domain, which can be knowledge, life, light, nature, tempest, trickery, or war. 5e is far more freeform in your choice of character. If you're a life domain cleric and you cast inflict wounds, you're not going to get demoted from being a cleric. There's even a death domain cleric that is only in the Dungeon Master's Guide, so it's an optional rule that the DM has to allow another player to play. And I love this tiny detail in the starting equipment, which gives you a mace or warhammer, just a small nod to the tradition of notorious mace-wielding Archbishop Turpin. The release of 5th edition led to many expanded numbers of divine domain options like the Arcana domain, Forge domain, Grave domain, Order, Peace, and Twilight domains in books that expanded the rules. D&D exploded in popularity in the following years, especially due to live streaming shows like Critical Role and Dimension 20, and the COVID pandemic acted as a catalyst for the hobby to people who were in lockdown who wanted to play D&D online. Popular characters were now born from the cleric class in D&D, like Pike Trickfoot, Kristen Applebee's, and Shadowheart. With the release of the updated rules to D&D in 2024, the edition number was dropped in favor of the year being the signifier for the rules, denoting when they were released. The 2024 rules served as an update to the 2014 rules, but it was mostly unclear on whether or not these rules would be compatible with each other. Ultimately, adventure modules, abilities, and spells can be interchangeable between 2014 and 2024, but it does require some house ruling and finagling, especially with subclasses. The 2024 Cleric was slightly reimagined while still trying to stay true to 2014's design. Jeremy Crawford, the lead designer, mentioned during an interview with Todd Kenrick, when discussing the new rule changes, the Cleric was received very well in our previous playtest, and so we're focused on fine-tuning this class. Cleric is fundamentally the same as they were in 2014, with some slight adjustments. The biggest change being that it and all classes gain their subclasses at level 3. To accommodate this, at level 1, you gain a Divine Order, which is either Protector or Thaumaturge. Protector gives you proficiency in martial weapons and training with heavy armor, and the Thaumaturge gives you an additional cantrip and a bonus to your Arcana or Religion checks. Clerics can still turn undead, and they gain a new ability called Divine Spark, where they can heal or deal damage. While subclasses from 2014 are still compatible with the system, many of the subclasses were not updated to the new rules, so the Cleric has the option between 4: life, light, trickery, or war. And now we're all caught up. The Cleric started as an idea, as a vampire hunting priest character, then evolved from writer to writer to something new every time. I can't help but be fascinated by its definition in AD&D 2nd edition. The vast concept of ideology through action and powers manifested in a character is not just cool, it's profound. It tackled whether or not a cleric or priest is right in what they believe. The priests will often be right if they're receiving the word of their god. This word may be misinterpreted, but it's always correct. They could have any sort of accuracy the DM decides if they're following some pattern of ritual interpretation. Perhaps the ritual is effective, perhaps it is not. If they're analyzing the situation based on their current knowledge, then their accuracy depends mostly on their interpretive abilities. A priesthood might have enough knowledge of the world and human nature to be able to supply consistently correct answers to supplicants. If they're telling the audience what it wants to hear, they could be very accurate for a time, especially if they're prophesying for a warlike state, which is on the rise and mostly asking about upcoming victories. Eventually, however, the tides of fate will turn, and the prophecies will become unreliable, which will disillusion the populace. If they're working for gain, they could be very successful for quite a while. Eventually, though, the scandal will break, and the population will learn the truth, which could be very bad for those greedy prophets. The cleric class, in comparison to other classes, is so freeform and infinitely complicated. At base level, you are a guy with powers from a god. But depth of this idea requires an understanding of the universe. I don't think any other class compares to the level of thought and attention that could apply to a cleric. It is, by its existence of action through faith, the most complex class. There isn't a mechanic for fighters on why they would wield their weapon, nor does the rogue class give you special abilities based on your philosophy of thievery. A wizard's judgment of right and wrong doesn't affect the spells they can cast. Only the cleric. And maybe paladin. There is something deeply human about the cleric. And it's not that you had to play a human in order to play them in the first edition. Manifesting power through belief. That belief can theoretically be anything. Rallying people behind a cause, philosophy, or theology. Then getting superpowers out of it is so us being blessed is the universe's validation towards your faith. It doesn't have to be a man or a thing. It can be an ideal or a perspective. While warlocks make pacts with powerful beings and paladins swear oaths to uphold, clerics manifest power through conviction. Yeah, sometimes that's a god, but that's the human perspective. God could be a fabrication, but the actions made in the name of God are real, as is any belief. And it channels through a cleric like your thoughts channel through you. The cleric manifests power through experience, and everyone's experience is different. Thanks for watching. Anyways, this entire history of the cleric in D&D. Hope you enjoyed that. I would love to make more of these. I had a lot of fun researching this topic. I put a lot of work into it. Thank you to Skylar for editing. Thank you to Emma for helping me make this set. And let me know which class you want to... Oh, the camera died. That means it's done. That means the video's over. Okay, bye.